In this new playlist, History in China, I will emphasize the topics on things or events in history period, by means, after the existence of writing. As a start, let's in brief look at the origin of existence of the Chinese writing. The most famous myth says that Emperor Fuxi created Chinese characters that were carved on tortoise shells. His era was unclear, but some predicted in around the early of the 3rd millennium BC. There are also some various sayings in ancient Chinese documents, such as knotting rope, pictures, contract letter, and the legend of Emperor Huangdi, assigning his historian Cangjie to create Chinese letters in around the mid of the 3rd millennium BC. That is why Chinese claims that Chinese culture is around 4,000 to 5,000 year old. By the way, I may use the terms of Chinese character, Chinese letter, or Chinese word interchangeably. Please refer to my basic pinyin playlist in this channel for further clarification. However, in the recent 100 years or so, there were so many archaeological findings about Chinese characters that shocked the world. Before that, the earliest Chinese character fact was based on bronze relic from Ying, or Shang dynasty, which was in about 1600 BC to 1000 BC. It was in 1899 that Wang Yirong, 1845 to 1900, was ill. He was prominently in charge of the country's highest educational institution for many years during Emperor Guangxu, 1875 to 1908. Of the Qing dynasty, 1636 to 1911. As he knew a lot about medicine, he used to check carefully the traditional Chinese medicine ingredients and qualities before further cooking them, and he saw inscriptions on one of the medicine material, tortoise shells. As his occupation expertise was in the ancient inscriptions on gold and stone, he quickly recognized that those inscriptions had many similarities with the inscriptions on ancient bronze from the Ying dynasty, and contained rich information on divination and social life. Then, he started to collect as much as possible those tortoise shells with such inscriptions. In August of the following year, the 8 Allied imperialists conquered Beijing, and he was shameful of the country humiliation, so he committed suicide. His family then gave the tortoise shell collection to Liu He, 1857 to 1909, to repay the debt. In 1903, Liu He published the first book on them, 铁云藏龟, or 铁云 hidden turtles. In the book, he proposed for the first time that the inscriptions were from the Ying dynasty, and that status has remained to this day. Luo Zhenyu, 1866 to 1940. Saw the inscriptions for the first time at Liu He's house. After tracing, in 1908, he finally found that the tortoise shells were actually collected up by farmers in Xiaotun village, in Anyang, on the North China Plain, in Henan province, the archaeological site of Ying capital ruins. In the spring of 1915, he was the first scholar to come to Xiaotun village for field exploration. Many of the excavated shells were brittle and broken into small pieces. Wang Guowei, 1877 to 1927, found that thousands of those small fragments belonged to the same part. Then he glued them together to form a large piece of text that could be read easier. This greatly improved the effectiveness of their identification and research. In the 1920s, based on the inscriptions, Wang Guowei also successfully confirmed the names and their sequence of the emperors of Ying dynasty against the existing historical records. This advanced the history of Chinese letters by more than 1,000 years. The discovery of the inscriptions triggered further excavation on the 3,000-year ruins of Ying that began in 1928 and lasted for more than 80 years. The discoveries mainly included more than 50 palaces and temples, more than 10 royal tombs, thousands of noble and commoner tombs, thousands of sacrificial pits, many handicraft workshops, and a large number of tortoise shell inscriptions and bronze wares, jade, pottery, bone wares, etc., representing the image of that time Chinese society. For more than a century, about 150,000 shells had been discovered. The inscriptions were relatively complete and mature Chinese characters system that could be seen at present. It had been relatively complex, and had found more than 3,000 words, including nouns, pronouns, verbs, auxiliary, adjectives and other categories. However, scholars were sure that the tortoise shells were by no means the initial stage of Chinese writing, and there had to have been a long development process before it. And the excavation also had become a breakthrough to modern Chinese archaeology. In 1984, archaeologists found a fragment of a flat pot in Taosi archaeological site in Xiangfen County, Shanxi Province. The stubble was painted in red, and there were two characters, one of which has already identified. This script is 1,500 years earlier than the tortoise shell inscriptions. According to radiocarbon dating, it is about 2500 BC to 1900 BC. Taosi culture was a higher stage than the society of the late Hongshan culture, but also established its central position in the tribes at that time, which is also the earliest appearance of the term of 中国 or China. Yicheng County, not far on the southeast Xiangfen County, was the site of the legendary Yao. Bone inscriptions found in 2005 refer to symbols engraved on animal bones, hieroglyphs or graphic characters. They are found in Shandong, Chifeng, and Guanzhong, and are the earliest identifiable writings that mainly focus on memoirs. The acute-angled agate or other gemstones are used for the carving tool, in between 2600 BC and 1300 BC. It is a popular text during Longshan culture period. Since the end of 2010, the inheritance relationship of the inscriptions with tortoise shell inscriptions and modern Chinese characters have been successfully systematically deciphered from the origin and structure of the characters. Qingdun archaeological site in Hai'an County, Jiangsu Province, which belongs to the Liangzhu culture in the lower reaches of the Changjiang River, dates back 5,000 years ago and has numerals inscribed. Among the major archaeological excavation at the Qingdun archaeological site, a large number of stone tools, pottery and jade tools. The most mysterious is a surprising number of elk antler fossils bearing markings left by the Qingdun ancients. Many people believed that this was more than 2,000 years earlier than the tortoise shell inscriptions, and were confirmed as the initial symbol of Yi, or the changes study. Still of Liangzhu culture in the lower reaches of the Changjiang River, Jiangsu Province. Zhuangqiao grave amulet dated back 5,000 years ago shows that the ancestors at that time had reached a certain level of civilization. Such characterization symbols were needed for communication. Around 20 or 30 kinds of inscription symbols carved on the rim of the pottery pot at the Banpo archaeological site belonging to Yangshao culture dating back nearly 6,000 years ago are considered as some simple characters produced at the starting phase of character formation. Some of them are numbers. More than 630 inscribed symbols have been found in the Shuangdun archaeological site in Bangfu, dated back more than 7,000 years ago, which are rich and diverse. The variety of symbols is rich of content. The functions of the inscriptions can be classified into ideogram, stamp, and count. The engraved talisman reflects the life form of the early Shuangdun ancestors, has the nature of primitive characters, and is one of the sources of Chinese characters. By systematically examining and comparing the inscription symbols on pottery tablets, excavated from more than 100 sites of 19 archaeological cultures all over China, It is believed that the earliest inscription symbols in China appeared at
贾湖
archaeological site in
武阳 河南
province. It has a history of more than 8,000 years, 9,000 to 7,800 years ago. Among the 21 characters found, the 11 characters have been recognized. Chinese characters have been constantly developed for millenniums, and their shapes have been continuously progressed. Along with the evolution of Chinese history, they have undergone the changes of tortoise-shell inscriptions, bronze inscriptions, large seal script, small seal script, official script, regular script, and become the characters we use today together with the standard simplified Chinese characters. Even though
Wang Yirong
did not take much time on the tortoise-shell inscriptions, all these new findings on the origin of Chinese writing started by his acute identification and immediate action on the tortoise-shell inscriptions. So people accredited the finding of the tortoise-shell inscriptions to him. So with this short description, you may estimate the period of Chinese history which will be a base reference in the following videos. Thank you for watching.